Hello and welcome to Comic Industry Insiders, the weekly podcast where we get to know the operators of the comics industry and tease out the tips and techniques to help grow your career or business in comics. Our guest this week is Martin Casas. Martin is a rare bird in comics retail. With a background in politics and community organizing, including an internship at the White House, Martin brings a unique perspective to the challenge of building a new kind of comic shop. The shop he created, Apotheosis Comics in St. Louis, Missouri, is equal parts comic shop, nerd bar, and event space. It's difficult to describe just how comfortable the environment is. I knew immediately upon sitting at the bar and getting to know Martin that he was someone we should all get to know better. The conversation that ensued gave up gems on adjusting inventory to the needs of your community, how a job in politics prepares you to analyze the data needed to run a comic shop day to day, using events to attract new customers, and his POS Shopify with its variety of add-ons to maintain that relationship, and overcoming his most challenging year filled with lawsuits and bad actors using the king of all motivators, spite. Be sure to listen all the way to the end of this episode for everyone's favorite two words, free beer. And now, St. Louis's own Martin Casas.
Let's start off with that name that I fumbled in the intro, and I'm keeping it. Although I may end up re-recording the intro. Who knows? We'll see. What is so? Let's talk about that name. Where did that come from? How'd you pick it?
Yeah, so Apotheosis was serendipitous that it became our title or the name of the store because, we're St. Louis. So there's four choices. You can do St. Louis Comics, you can do River City Comics, you can do Gateway Comics, Arch Comics, Midwest, some kind of iteration of St. Louis or something to kind of stand out. And so when we started doing some research about what we wanted to do, what we wanted to name, we started looking around at other symbols of St. Louis. And in the front of the St. Louis Art Museum is this giant statue that King Louis the Seventh, 14th, the one before the guy who got his head cut off, and he gave a statue to the city of St. Louis back in the 1800s. That it was called the Apotheosis of St. Louis, and what it meant was that the French thought that the St. Louis was going to become this shining city on a hill. It was going to become the greatest example of what a city could be because it used to be a French colony. So, whatever. Little did they know. So the symbol that's in front of the St. Louis Art Museum of King Louis was the original symbol of St. Louis before the arch came around. So after the arch, everything got, in 1964, all the symbols got changed from King Louis, which is this guy holding a scepter on top of a horse with a sword. And I was like, dude, that is perfect because it's like we can make him into a character. The character become King Louis, the superhero. We can put him in a bunch of different things, and we can feature him, and we can make a comic about him and kind of make a little adventure. So there's some storytelling there to do. But then also the Apotheosis, it has a literary term, and it is, the most understandable is in Joseph Campbell's hierarchy of, storytelling. George Lucas followed this in Star Wars, was that the Apotheosis is the part of the hero's journey that they have to undergo a transformation in order to become a hero. So it's the origin story, right? And so I thought that was really appropriate for a comic book store to be the Apotheosis or to talk about an origin story. And from kind of the business standpoint of it was we really wanted to redo how a comic book store operated. So the idea was also really, it worked on a variety of levels because we're becoming a different kind of comic book store too.
Right.
So King Louis was our logo for a long time until the riots of 2020, and we found out that King Louis was a horrible racist. So we were asked to get rid of the logo and change it. So now we have this nice glitch drawing,
Well, Excellent. Well, I could see. Yeah, I could see how you'd want to do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you talk about how your story is different? Because I found it to be unique. I found it to be, and this is someone who has visited, I don't know, hundreds of comic shops, and yours was a unique experience.
Thanks. Yeah, we get that a lot. I mean, we hear kind of both sides of that story. One is that there are some people who feel we're not enough of a comic book store. We're not really a comic book store, because we don't have certain things in the shop. But when I first started thinking about opening a comic book store, there was a couple things I kept hearing and a couple ideas that I really wanted to keep track of. One of them was that I was terrified of having so much overstock that would just fill the store up. I mean, you've been visiting stores all over the country, all over the world. Everyone's got a warehouse, a basement, a back room just filled with comics. They're not moving. So we wanted to really focus on, we didn't really want to do a lot of back issues or things like that because we didn't want to get jammed up like that. But also, when we talked to comic book store owners or other people in the comic book industry, the first thing they said was like, "Don't open a comic book store. Like, don't do it. It's not a good idea." And when I looked at the numbers, sure enough, there was a lot of credibility to that argument. But St. Louis, we're the home of Anheuser-Busch. We got microbreweries on every corner. There's a whole revolution happening here. And I'll, speaking for myself, this is good for everybody outside of St. Louis. This is going to come off really wrong, but my daughter grew up in a neighborhood bar. Because it was like we'd walk our dog there, and next door there was a hot dog place. We get hot dogs, and then we'd go next door to this place called the TikTok Tavern, and we'd sit at the bar. We'd eat a hot dog. She'd get a soda, and so kind of like the beer culture is baked into the St. Louis community here. I mean, you go. There's coloring books and there's kids' books at some of these bars because that's what we do here. We do it a lot. So the idea of putting a bar in a comic book store from a perception standpoint didn't really faze me. But when I started looking at the profit margins compared to comics versus alcohol, the profit margins on alcohol are a lot higher. So there are a lot of days where the alcohol sales will carry us to making payroll and paying the bills wholeheartedly. And it also gives us kind of an added element to be able to cater to different kinds of events. So because of that, we have every Saturday we have a comedy show. And we have comedians that come in. It's actually, we just had our 200th show. We're the longest running comedy show in St. Louis. I just found out. And, we do art events, we do Yelp events, we do dating events, we do seminars, we do history classes, we have a stage in there. So that's kind of what it kind of opens us up to all these other options, all these other events, so that we're just not just a kid's store and a game store. So it's been really interesting.
I can see how that having like Willy Wonka said, candy is dandy, but liquor is quicker, right? So many stores that run events and run social activities and have gaming and have the challenge is always how do you show profit from people just hanging out in your store, bars do make a profit. There's a reason there's so many of them. So yeah.
Well, and the other thing too is that if you are a place that your parents take you to, or you're on a vacation, you're a major walking place, thinking of a place like Graham Crackers in Chicago, Golden Apple in LA, Midtown in New York, these are destinations. And,
right.
You drag if you're going to take your kids there, you're going to take your teenagers, you're going to go there with your wife. And if your wife is like my wife, she doesn't want shit to do with the comics. She'll sit down and have like a glass of wine or have a drink while you meander for an hour or two. So, because we're on South Grand, so we're a major tourist destination, and we get a lot of business of just walking where the parents will sit down, they'll have a drink, they'll play board games, they'll play a video game, and they'll let their kids read, and it works out pretty well. Works out really well.
That's awesome.
Yeah. A lot of sodas.
Can you tell me a little bit? A lot of sodas. Yeah. You had quite a selection too of sodas too.
Yeah.
It was yeah.
Well, and that's kind of the thing too that we've learned over the last couple of years. Like we were spending a lot of money on having like a wide selection of alcohol. Like we'd have, you can put 9 beers, front-facing beers in the cooler. So we'd have 9 times 6 rows of beer, which is a lot of goddamn beer. And so the first couple of years we were spending a lot of money on alcohol, and then we realized that we are unique enough in that we don't need to have everything, because we just need to be very particular. And this goes into comic book reading too, is sell the stuff your customers want. And so we were kind of noticing the things that sold a lot, and it was the cheaper Busch beers, and then it was like the comic book themed stuff, the more interesting things you couldn't find elsewhere. So we got rid of a lot of the dead inventory that wasn't moving as fast, and so it's just focusing on things that high turnover, people enjoy, and making sure we're watching that bottom dollar by not having stuff sitting around for so long.
Yeah, I'm sure that's gotta turn. So this was not, you did not come from a place of retail, right? Am I wrong in that? This was not your the career that you had just before this. Can you talk a bit about where you were and how that kind of informed this unique take on retail?
Oh yeah. I'd like to talk to other comic store owners to see if they had dramatic of a 180 turn of a career as I probably have. It's pretty wild to see.
Listen, I think most of us are like me. Like I started at a comic book counter at like 21 and just haven't done anything else since then. So I think you're going to hear that story a lot more. But yeah. I loved yours. Well, speaking of origin stories.
Yeah, so I'm from Southern California originally, and I'll take the long road here, and you can edit out whatever you don't like. But
please go for it.
Yeah. So I started in Southern California, and back in the '90s, and I was like, I was a closeted comic book guy, right? No, I all my comics literally in the back of my closet. No one knew about it, all that stuff, and. Went to comics, and then I got a job or an internship at the White House. So I dropped out of college, my freshman year of college, and got an internship at the White House. And it wasn't because I knew anybody. My family's all construction workers. It was because my friend Charles, whenever we'd go out partying on Friday and Saturday, I'd spend the night at his house some nights. And I'd wake up in the morning, and it's Sunday, and I'd watch Meet the Press with his mom, who was a teacher at Cal State Fullerton.
Okay. And
we watched Meet the Press. So one morning she comes in and she's like, "You need to leave." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, Roxy, I'll get out of here. Don't worry about it. No problem." She goes, "No, I mean like the state. Like you need to like get out of here and do something with your life." And I'm like, "Well, what are you talking about?" And she goes, have you ever thought about working at the White House?" So to me, the idea of working at the White House was so foreign that I thought she was talking about this steakhouse in Laguna Beach, and I thought she wanted me to be a chef. Yeah. So I was like, "You want me to cook?" And she, "Okay, yeah." And she's like, no, like the White House. So she helped me get together my application, do the security clearance, apply, write a letter. And it's like Christmas of my first semester at junior college, I got accepted. And I drove from California to Washington, D.C. And I had like 3 suits with me. And I lived in a converted garage in Northeast Washington, D.C. But I worked at the White House. Like my job was like I worked at the White House during the day, and I was a bar. I waited tables at night. And so it was wild because so I walk in there. My first job is I have to take a lampshade to the West Wing. That was my job. Like, "Hey, this lampshade just came in. Can you take it to the West Wing?" And I'm like, yeah, I can do that. So I walked over to the White House, showed him my badge, took off the one lampshade, put on the new one, screwed it in. And I was like, "Oh shit!" And walked past the Oval Office. And then, but my primary job was I worked in the comment line greeting card office, and so they did anybody who had a problem with anything, they would call the White House. And this was a job that when I worked for the mayor's office at the end of my political career, there's some great parallels because, when you don't know who to call, you call the guy at the top. And so in America, it's the president. And in St. Louis, it's the mayor. So, we'd have to get all the job was to compile reports of what people were talking about. We'd send them to the press secretary for a report every night. And then we would fulfill requests for the president from people getting letters signed. But then I was there for 6 months. Then but that was a wild job because again, I came from a family of construction workers and no one knew what the hell I was doing. I didn't even know what I was doing, but it was the most wild thing ever because 6 months before I was helping kids make beer bongs for my job at the hardware store, and now I'm working at the White House. It was quite the turnaround. So you can imagine. You're really? Huh, okay.
My favorite part about this story is that you're just watching Meet the Press with your friend's mom, and she decides that you're going to work at the White House, and it made it happen.
Yeah.
That's incredible. That is incredible.
I was very fortunate. When I was in high school, my father died, my family lost everything we had, and so we had to move to Texas because we had to go take care of my grandpa. And so we went from California to Texas was in that summer was pretty traumatic. But when I came back, I ended up living with my brother, who was 23 at the time, in high school. So my brother was my legal guardian, and at times it was as crazy as you can imagine it would be. But I had 3 main rules. One was that I can't drop out of school or fail school. I can't get anyone pregnant, and I cannot drink during the weekday. Those were my rules. But then on the weekend,
those are still pretty solid guidelines. I mean, if you're gonna have something to live by.
My brother set me up well. So, I remember when I graduated high school, I got because my family's all bricklayers, I got this beautiful mahogany level, which you put on top of brick walls to make sure they're flat, to make sure they're even.
Yeah. And
because I was supposed to go work construction, I was like, nah, fuck, no thanks. So anyways, long story short, I'm in D.C. I'm like, well, I can't go home now. And I ended up parlaying that into a campaign job in Chicago for a guy running for governor. Then I moved to Vermont to go work for Howard Dean in 2004. Then I moved down to Virginia and ran some state house races down there. So I did a lot of political work, a lot of organizing work, a lot of government stuff. I went. What did I do next? And then I went to work for the DNC, and I worked there in 2004 during the presidential election, and I was fired because the governor's son of Rhode Island needed a job, and I was the lowest guy on the totem pole, and I got canned the day before we were supposed to 2 days before we were supposed to go to the Boston convention. And I remember it was like one of those deals where I think the reason why I got fired was because I may have embarrassed them, because we were talking about moving up. This was 2004, before we had laptops. So we had to lug up all these hard-ass huge computers, And
sure,
they were talking about how are you going to so he was in charge of figuring out how to get them all up there. So he's like, okay, we're going to rent semi-trucks, and we're going to put all the computers in the semi-trucks and bring them up there. And we're talking about maybe 15 computers total. And I go, well, why don't you just put them on the bottom of the bus? And he's like, you want to put them on the bottom of the bus? Because we were taking Greyhounds up there. I go, yeah, we'll just put them on the bottom of the bus with all the suitcases. And he's like, you think we're going to tie computers to the bottom of a bus as we're driving it up to Boston? I was like, no, like the carriage underneath the bus. And he's like, you don't put things under the bus. And I go, have you never been on a bus? He hadn't been on the bus before because he's the son of the goddamn governor. So of course he didn't know. And then everyone in the room was like, yeah, we'll just put it on the bottom of the gram. So it was shortly after that I got fired. So that wasn't. This is all completely useless information to comic store people, but I find it hilarious.
I think it's you don't disagree with the boss's son. I don't remember how that guy.
One
was
of the governors.
But nepotism will get you.
Exactly right. Yeah. So then I did a bunch of campaign stuff for a while, and then we wound up in St. Louis, and I kept doing political campaigns, but in between that, I found it because elections happen every 2 years, so I needed something to do in between there. So I started this company called Front Yard Features, where we had inflatable movie screens that we went out to different neighborhoods and screened movies. And so I turned that into, I started off with one screen, and then the city bought me a screen, and then Kansas City bought me a screen. And then I started, so within 2 years I had 5 screens. I was operating all over the state of Missouri. I had like 5 or 6 employees. We were going out Thursday, Friday, Saturday with inflatable movie screens. Like it was awesome. And then I did that for a bit. Oh, it was a blast. It was so much fun. But then I started the thing called the St. Louis Swap Meet, which so out in the Midwest they call them flea markets. I grew up in Orange County, so I always know about swap meets. Then around that time, the Mayor Cruson asked me to help run her campaign to get her elected. We won, and then so that was 2016 going to 2017, and I was kind of parlaying my experience of answering phone calls and doing customer service for the White House. I parlayed that into a job in the mayor's office doing the director of constituent service, yes, is that what title? Yeah, constituent services for the mayor's office. So again, if anyone had a problem, they would call me, or they call the mayor's office. I would have to handle it. And we did things from like wild dogs to vacant homes, potholes to helping people whose what are they called? Helping people whose like boyfriends were abusive and they needed to get a stay against them, and helping people find people who were lost, helping them find their way home. It was a lot of stuff we did. It was also during the time where we were moving Confederate statues all over the country, and there was police protests happening every day, and I just got exhausted, and I wanted to do something inspirational because on top of that, through my 20 years of doing public service, we had gotten to a point where the people who we thought should be heroes weren't heroes, and the people who should be solving problems weren't. And I wanted to do something that I felt would be good for my soul, but also something that I could help inspire people to discover heroes. And that was comic books. And I know that sounds cheesy, but I was very disillusioned at a time because this was 2017. So, 2017. And so I just thought it was a perfect time to get out of politics and do something that I felt would be good for my soul. And that was comics. And if we don't have heroes in real life, we might as well idolize the ones that are fictional. And we've been doing that ever since.
It's interesting is that as I hear that story, there are a couple things that jump out to me that kind of inform the kind of retail that you're doing now. Mm-hmm. The idea of you taking that feedback and then filing reports to the people above you. These are the things that are happening. These are the things that people are responding to. I know that you're very data driven as a retailer, both as you as on what you buy and how you present it to specific fans. What? I'll get to the second one first, but let's talk about that for just a second. I've seen how you really dig into sales patterns and how you, if you don't mind talking about how you think about staying in your customers' lives, continuing to reach out to them on a product by product basis, that kind of thing. I found to be interesting.
Yeah, we our POS system is Shopify, and so we have a variety of apps that we use to keep track of customer sales. So, when a customer comes in the door and they buy something from us, the first thing we do is we get their name and email so we can follow up with them. And that is paramount, making sure we know how to get in touch with them again later. And we have a system set up that in 5 days, we'll send an automatic email that asks them what they thought of the product, and then we'll get a review back. And then in 2 weeks, we'll send an email asking if they want to get the second volume or the next volume. And we also kind of really not study, but pay attention to what our customers are ordering through subscriptions, and use that to inform, what our orders are going to be. And most importantly, we do that so when customers come to the door, we can have a conversation with them, because there's that personal bond that we need to establish with each customer, because we recognize that not only can they go to any other comic book store in the region, they can also go to any other website online and buy it from them, probably cheaper. So recognizing as a small business retailer, the thing that I constantly remember is that small business customers have to make a conscious choice to try the harder method of purchasing the thing they want, because it's so much easier to get it elsewhere. How you do that is you've got to build those relationships, because you got to let them know that, like, you're not only just supporting this store and a business, you're supporting a person and a friend and a community, which is why part of our marketing plan is to have all these in-store events, so we're always attracting new groups of customers in and finding ways to build relationships with them. And that has been very important to us. Is that and one of the big important parts of the bar is they sit down at the bar, we have a conversation, we actually get to know our customers. They're not just kind of coming and going to buy a product and leaving. We've got games out on the table to get them to hang out. We've got stuff that we can give out to people. We have these masks that we give to their kids, because when we've noticed that kids are shy when they come to the store. They don't want to buy anything, but swear to God, you put a mask on them and there's a confidence in them that they'll open up and they'll engage with you, and the parents will love you forever.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Masks for kids to get them to open up. That's incredible.
Yeah, and it's not, and they cost nothing. You can get a bundle of them off Amazon for nothing, and you give them out for free, put in your marketing budget. Parents appreciate it. There was this woman who she couldn't buy her kid any comics, and she was crying when she went out the door, and I said, ma'am, hold on a second, hold on. It's actually free mask day, and no one leaves the store without a mask, and so here you go, sweet pea. And can I put it on you? And I put it on the mask. Oh my God, you're how fast can you run? And then she set her down, ran back and forth on the sidewalk, and I go, you must be the Flash. And the mom was like, thank you so much. And it was just one of those little things that, she'll remember, the kid will remember. It's that little bit of effort that just reaching up from behind the register and talking to somebody goes so far. I mean, it really does.
That's really moving. And plus, you are legitimately, going back to your motivation for being in comics is, inspiring heroism. That's incredible. That's really beautiful. I like that a lot. Well, let's go, please.
That's the thing that we really I enjoy the most about on my down days when I don't want to do this anymore. The thing that keeps me going is knowing that it's that person's first time into a store, and it's the first interaction with somebody who understands their passion, or there's that connection with a kid that comes in, or let's be honest, they're mostly adults these days, but giving someone that connection that, like, this is a place for you, that's what keeps me coming back in every day. And there have been a lot of days where I'm like, I'm ready to go home.
I'm certain. I'm certain. I remember those days well. Well, let's take it out of the ethereal, right? Let's take it out of let's take it down to, like, the ground level. How was business? How was business, like, say, 2023? Let's just contain it to there.
Business in 2023 for us wasn't great because we were just coming off of we had survived the pandemic. We expanded briefly in 2021. Well, we had started our expansion in 2021. 2022 was about kind of like trying to keep it maintained. And then at the end of 2022, we had a second location. We had to close it down within a year of being open. And, 2023 was a lot of me trying to reshuffle the deck and, clear up the debt that we had from the other store, clear up, make sure that our systems are back in place, and, redoing how I think about our employees. So 2023 was a rebuilding year, and 2023 is now, 2024 is now a expansion year. And not an expansion in the way that we're going to open new stores up. Expansion in the way that we're going to look at the things we have and figure out how can we sell them better, and figure out what is the things that make the most money and how can we turn them over to increase revenue, right? In the comic book business, comic books at best, I think with Image's discounts, you're looking at 57%, 50% margins. We try to, we didn't really want to do back issues, but we had to because the margins are so much higher. We could get them, from customers. Customers wanted them, so we now had to clear space for some back issues. So we have to develop that market, but we have to kind of keep our eye on the things that are most successful, and that's making sure that our trades are stocked and the comics are that sell the best, we order the most of. And it's like when Bad Idea has a new book that comes out, finding out what that book is about and how do we target it to new customers to get them to buy it, spending more time trying to figure out, what is the right hook for each product we have. That's our goal for this year. So, 2023 we had a bunch of problems that kicked me in the ass, and so much so that actually we went on a vacation in the summer of 2023, went to Europe. Might have to fucking keep it vague. Went to Europe, and I was talking to other comic book store owners, and I really spent a lot of 2023 kind of talking on Facebook to other comic shop owners, and it was all the same thing, right? They all kind of had the same thing where eventually they all get tired and they all get grumpy, and they're all kind of the same. It's all the same guys. Even in Amsterdam, it was the same guys when I was there. And I didn't want to be that, so I knew I had to make some changes about what that was and try to figure out what my business model was. And so there was a time at the end of 2023 where I was like, my birthday is December 30th, and I go, we're going to have a party at the store on December 30th, and I'm going to close this fucker, and then we're done. And that's my birthday present to me. We're closing. But then I through odd circumstance, I decided to keep it going and rebuild it, and continue to rebuild it now.
I'd be a shitty interviewer if I didn't ask. Can you talk about what is that? What brings you back from that? We don't have to. We can cut it out.
No, I'm fine. I actually, two things. One was the desire to overcome the challenges on my own and prove that I can do it. And the second one was straight up fucking vengeance. I wanted to get some revenge. And that's the truth. We had
against who?
Oh, I'll tell you who. We in the beginning of 2023, so we had God, dude, this was the dumbest. I don't know, and I don't know if you were there at the store when this was going on, but so in 2023, I called my landlord and I go, hey, I'm going to move this yoga studio upstairs because they're a good business. We were leasing out the first and second floor. We used to have an Airbnb up there, and then we closed it, and then we had game rooms, and that didn't work, and blah blah blah. So we rented out to this yoga studio, and called my landlord. Said we're good. We're gonna do this. Landlord says that's a great idea. I think a yoga studio would be great. Fine. So then we're going to lease to them they're paying us for 2 months. Then in March of 2023, they come in. The landlord comes down and says, "Nope, we're going to lease." And this is why business owners need to own their own property. This is why I cannot stress this enough. Landlord comes in and says, "Nope, you're not going to rent from Martin anymore. You're going to rent from me." And we said, "Fine." So our lawyer who wrote the lease wrote a document saying, "Lease is terminated. You're going to continue with Maritza," or I'm sorry, our landlord, yada, yada, yada. Great. We're not, sure. As long as I have to pay rent, I don't give a shit. Not my problem. Wash my hands of it. So July rolls around, and we get sued by our landlord. And I'm like, what the hell is this about? And they miss a bunch of court dates. We still don't know why we're being sued. And then around this time, we decided to close the Cherokee location. And so that's that. So then Cherokee store closes. We get sued. The yoga studio, whom we haven't talked to since March, puts up a GoFundMe page that says, we've been given the opportunity to expand into the space downstairs because Apotheosis Comics is closing, and we're going to open a chill yoga bar. And we're like, oh, dude, we're fucked. Like, how are we going to, oh my God, this. So I guess, because we don't know why we're being sued, so our landlord is, okay, so I guess that's okay. So now we got to find a second location. So we're just like, dude, what are we going to do, man? What are we going to do? And we still haven't talked to the lawyers at all. So then this local paper called the Riverfront Times calls, and they're like, they do stories about the business closings, and they call them, they're like, hey, so what's up with the you guys closing on Cherokee Street? And I told him, I was like, look, the business model didn't work down there, so we closed it up. It sucks because I really liked the building. I was really hoping to be successful, but businesses open and close every day. It didn't work out. I'm moving on. We're going to refocus on Grand.
Right.
And then at the end of it, she goes, hey, I got to ask you, is this having anything to do with you guys being sued on South Grand? And I said, I was like, no, it's two different things completely. And she's like, oh, okay. And that was the end of it. So I kind of explained to her what the two situations were about, and she's like, okay. Next day, lawyer calls. Next day, my lawyer calls and said, do not read the RFD. Don't do it. Don't do it. And it was an article about how the yoga studio had said that we had lied to them about moving into location and committed fraud. And we were using their rent to pay off the debts for the second location. And, and now we're going to be thrown out and they're going to move into our location. And I'm like, well, what? Okay, interesting. And the reporter didn't tell me about that at all. So then the next day, that story blows up everywhere. And everyone in the comic book community in St. Louis is like, oh my God, Apotheosis is going under, oh my God. So then I had to spend the next couple weeks explaining what was going on to people. Like, look, we don't know. We have a court date. We're going to figure it out. Like, we're going to be here. We do not plan to close. We don't know what this story's about. And I'll tell you the thing where the vengeance comes in is that a lot of people who I thought were on our side in the community were sharing the story and then dogging us. And so I was like, oh, fantastic. Great. So then long story short, and then that night I have to go do a podcast interview about this event we're doing. Lawyer calls and lawyer says, our landlord calls and they want to settle. And I was like, great. And And the reason why they were suing us is because they forgot to get a lease for the second floor and thought that you guys were supposed to be paying rent the whole time. And I said, okay, that's why you're being sued. Okay, great.
Because they forgot to get a lease.
They forgot to get a lease. Which means that the person, the yoga student on the second floor, was not paying rent the entire year, and this GoFundMe account was complete bullshit. It was false. Like, she was not talking to the landlord about moving into our space. She was not talking to them at all about opening a chill yoga vibe bar. And so I then just lit up the fattest fucking cigar I had in my collection and smoked it, and I enjoyed it. And I was like, I cannot. It was like I knew the punchline to the best joke, and I couldn't tell anybody about it. And as luck would have it, the next day after the story came out, the city came and shut the yoga studio down because they didn't have a business license, because they didn't have a lease. So, so that's when I decided.
God, that's incredible.
Yeah, wow. So that's when I decided that perhaps vengeance might be my vengeance mixed with this ability to prove to people that I could make this thing, bring it back to life.
Yeah.
Is what fueled me to do it. And so probably not the healthiest thing to do, honestly, but we're going to go with it because it keeps me up in the morning.
Listen, the number of people that I know who are motivated by spite is it's high, and these are some high earning people. Like, these are some successful people. Listen, I don't think you have anything to apologize for there. That's an incredible story. I cannot believe you went through all of that last year. That's wow. Okay.
I think I'm much grayer because of it. I don't know if you can tell, but I think I gained much more gray. And on top of that, I also gave up drinking. So like I didn't.
Oh goodness.
Yeah. So unfortunately, I have lived a good life, and I got gout because of it. So I have to give up the sauce. Ooh. And it was the If I could make it through that, I'm not gonna come back.
Don't do it.
Oh God!
Exactly.
Yeah, it's the worst.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I don't. I have some. Yeah.
The other lesson about that too, about as it relates to 2023, was that I think that it gave me the proper motivation I needed to not just throw up my arms and quit. It gave me a purpose because what offended me the most was that there were people in the community that wanted to dance on our graves that would then hurt my employees, hurt our customers, and would impact them more than they thought. Like, I don't need to have a comic book store. There's many times where I am not collecting a paycheck because we got to make payroll or pay our bills. So I feel confident I can walk away from the scene at any time, but I do feel that for me, after this last year, it is important for me to stick it out for my employees. And just like we did during the pandemic, we're there because we are somebody's bread and butter, and I'll keep doing it.
That's wonderful. Well, I think all of that. So you've had that incredibly dramatic year, and during a time when the comics industry itself was really, it's not as though the rest of us were just like killing it all year long.
Right.
So what gives you hope? Like, other than spite, I assume that there's some hope behind there as well that keeps you going. What gives you hope for the comics industry in the 2024 and in the coming year?
I mean, it's honestly, it's the numbers. I mean, there are. Here's a little free tidbit for people, but your public library is a great source for consumer data that you can take advantage of anytime you want. They are adding more graphic novels, more graphic literature to their collections every year, which means that there are customers in that community that you can reach out to and you can get involved. The comic industry is growing. It is just happening during a time where prices are also getting higher for the entire industry. And what excites me about it is the reinvention that's going to come out of that. I think that there is still so much more that the industry where we can go, and I think that once we start looking past our four corners of our building, and we look at more like collaboration, we look at how do we break out, getting into the community, how do we bring the community into us, and how do we kind of start working together, I think is something that is very exciting to me. I was talking to somebody the other day, and the entire comic book industry is propped up by a network of small business owners who, by and large, are holding on to their ass as much as possible and are just trying to get it through the day. And when you think about the things that are going well in the comic book industry, there are more female creators, more queer creators, more Black and Asian Latino creators. There are more stories of diversity. There's more ways of getting story. There are audio books. There's audio, podcasts. I mean, there's so many ways of delivering these messages of American mythology that are so important, and that teach us a very good lesson about how to fight against oppression and how to exercise our free speech. Every time some school board votes on getting rid of graphic novels or books, the libraries get rid of them, the comic book shops got them. And not only that, but you've got some guy who's been raised on a healthy diet of Captain America and Superman behind the counter ready to show them why it's important. I think that's what keeps me going, is that there's little nuggets of data out there that once you kind of look at the whole picture, it's pretty promising. And I think that I think that one of the goals that I have and one of the struggles I had last year was that I love the idea of partnering with local comic book shops. I love the idea of, instead of me doing it on my own, of finding some kind of way of partnering with other local shops. Look, I come from a political background. My entire job in politics was finding consensus between two disparate ideas and bringing them together to form something. And, we all have to, we're not going to compromise. That means we all lose something. We're going to form consensus, which means we're all going to gain something. And I think that if we as comic shop owners can come together and really think about what are the strengths we have as individuals and what we really love about this industry, I think we got a shot. I think we got a shot at growing. I think we have a shot at great retirement. I think we have a shot at expanding what we can do. My biggest problem I have every day is that I have so much to do in a single day that I don't have enough hours in the day to do it. And it is, I love my employees to death, but they come and go. Owners stay.
Yes, that's right.
Some of the most motivated people you'll find is a small business owner. And, why not create an entire business corporation of those people to help run it and have someone kind of do all the back end shit that none of us like to do? Maybe I'm speaking for myself. Is that an editorial?
You did fine.
Yeah.
I think you speak for a lot. You speak for a lot of us who have been in that position. Mm-hmm. Well, Martin, we've gone way longer than was expected. I don't want to keep you much any longer tonight than I have to. I do want to thank you for coming on the show today. I think this has been incredible. I've learned so much about you, and I want to thank you for being honest and generous with that. And I, like I said, it was one of my favorite comic shop visits of last year, or even several years. So you're doing something really great there.
It means a lot.
Thank you for coming on the show today. Can you tell people where they can find you, where they can find your shop, where they can find you on social media, the rest of the internet?
Yeah, so Apotheosis Comics, shopapotheosis.com. You can find all of our links there. We're on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Twitter. I will never call it X. YouTube, League of Comic Geeks. You name it, we're there. So look us up. And
awesome.
I'd love to. And next time, if you're in St. Louis, mention this podcast, and I'll buy you a free beer.
I like that. This is our first incentive. I love that. That's wonderful.
Only I can do that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks again, Martin. Once again, my name is Adam Freeman. You've been listening to the Comics Industry Insiders. Don't forget to follow us on social media and like and subscribe so you can catch the next interview. And also, please check out the show notes. We're going to put a lot of the stuff that Martin talked about in there, and links to us around the internet as well. Thanks again, and have a great week.
Hello again. I do hope you enjoyed that conversation with Martin as much as I did. Before you leave, check out the show notes. We put links to all the comics and book recommendations mentioned in the show. And yeah, we do get them a little affiliate rip. I know, sometimes you use Amazon. It is what it is. While you're there, we'd also love to hear from you in the comments. What did you learn? What did you not like? What are you going to take away with you in your day? And say it with me, like and subscribe. Special thanks to Stephanie Gerk, who produced this episode, and research raven Anthony Militano. And of course, thanks again to Martin. It was really wonderful talking to you, buddy. Namaste, y'all.